You are listening to Empowering Testimonies of Faith with Coach Jeff Connors. Join Coach C, USA Strength and Conditioning Hall of Famer and Certified Health and Life Coach every Monday night at 7 for Empowering Testimonies of Faith as diverse individuals from various professions share their personal journey, leading them to spiritual strength through surrendering themselves to Christ. Coach Connors aspires to influence others to choose a healthy threefold lifestyle with spirituality as the powerful foundation. Now, here is Coach Connors.
Welcome to Empowering Testimonies of Faith with Jeff Connors. Tonight, our incredible guest is the Eagle Trail dancer who has defeated alcoholism, conquered the full Appalachian Trail, and then authored a book to talk about the experience. So, Mr. Eagle Trail dancer, can you tell us why you have that name and how you went about choosing that name?
Well, thank you, Jeff, first of all, for inviting me to this great opportunity to share in a couple subcultures, which is what my book is about, Follow the White Blazes. Now, first, I like to say, why am I in disguise? And I'll get to your question, because I know that's got to be anybody. What the heck is this going on in here now? Who's this freak? Well, all right. This is I'm going to just read it right out of my book here. It says, to adhere to the 11th tradition of Alcoholics Anonymous, I am not mentioning my birth name, nor can I, on film, I can't show my face. I only use my Indian guide pen trail name, which is Eagle Trail Dancer.
Yeah.
AA 11th tradition, not to be confused with the steps, is stated as follows. Our public relation policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. As you will see throughout the books, I don't even mention my names or any of their relatives that link to me. Also, some names have been changed to protect the privacy, while others are included because I have their permission. In addition to their full names, I sometimes mention their trail name in brackets. So when you're hiking long distances on any trail, you come up with a trail name.
Okay.
Now,
gotcha.
I came up with my own trail name that came out of Indian guides, which I had both my little boys in.
Okay.
And I had my younger son in it. That was my Indian guide name. Indian guides is sort of like, it's sort of like Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts, except that when you sign up a child, the adult parent also has to sign up, which means every time they go to a meeting or an outing or hiking or whatever it could, I have to go with them.
Gotcha.
So it eliminates babysitting. Okay. So in that program is where I kind of found the interest of backpacking, not the entire trail at that point, but just in general to get out in the woods. Another thing I need to read, though, just to declare, so nobody gets confused of who I am. I am not a therapist or a doctor of any kind. Again, my observations come from my personal experiences. I have no degrees in any of the healing arts, nor am I a spokesperson for any kind of healing practice. I am merely writing this book to give hope to those who may seek recovery from alcoholism or want information concerning this dreadful disease. I am hoping that the experiences I describe in this book may shed light on the joys and challenges of backpacking and how it works for me and for the long-term sobriety through its meditative and enlightenment qualities. On a scientific level, they have proven, and I mention this through the book and I show it, who and how they do it. They have proven that backpacking, solo backpacking, long distances, or just being in the wilds for a period of time actually is beneficial for those with PTSD or recovery of any sort. as well as just regular cognitive thinking. It actually helps creativity. It lets your mind relax in one state. And when it does that, it incorporates or encourages creative cognitive thinking. And they have proven this on a scientific level. Okay. Now, for centuries, people like in Australia, when they do the walkabouts, you probably heard of that. They go out for 4 or 5 days of walkabout. Sure. They already knew this. Centuries way before the scientists came up and say, oh, this is good for you. You should go out and do more of this. Hiking in the woods, okay? Or climbing mountains. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I saw Crocodile Dundee.
There you go. And they do walkabouts, don't they? Okay, so there you go.
What I'd like to do first is for you to tell me a little bit about the geography and the length of the Appalachian Trail.
Well, the Appalachian Trail is 2,198 miles, 0.1. Got to get that 0.1 in there. All right. There are some sections that are reasonably easy, like Maryland, Northern Virginia, New Jersey, but there's some sections that are extremely difficult. Maine would be one of them. In fact, Maine is so difficult that they have an area called 100-mile wilderness. There is no concrete roads for 100 miles. Now, there are some lumberjack roads, but they're dirt. And if you're not careful, if you take your car there, you could get run over by a big lumberjack truck because they drive down those roads and the dirt and all the dust is flying all over the place. But there's only a few of those in there. So now Maine is considered the most difficult. New Hampshire is right behind it. You're actually climbing hand over hand with your condo on your back. Your condo consists of all your food that you're going to be eating for a long time, maybe 4 days, 5 days. But in Maine, they even have a sign that says, when you enter the 100-mile wilderness, have a 10-day supply of food, because there's no towns and there's no actual concrete roads.
Right.
So you see, Maine is very difficult. Now, in the South, even though it's steep, they have switchbacks that go back and forth. That's to protect the trail. But in the North, they don't have switchbacks because it's all rocks. It just goes straight up the trail. You're climbing hand over hand. It's gorgeous, though. I will tell you that. It is beautiful. The most beautiful spots I've ever seen were in Maine and New Hampshire. And they have some beautiful spots in the South, too. They call the Southern Balds because for some reason the trees don't grow in some of these balds. But
right, and
go ahead.
When you're planning, you probably don't want to be in New Hampshire and Maine in the dead of winter.
Oh, definitely not. In fact, in Maine, people that hike the whole trail at one time, and I did it over years, which makes my book very unique because I show people how to do it in segments. And it took me 35 years because there were years I didn't get out there at all. Okay. And some years I might only get 30 or 40 miles. Other years I get 110 miles. Okay.
Gotcha.
But Maine being the toughest, New Hampshire is right behind them. So what they've done is, if anybody wants to hike the whole thing in 1 year, you're going to have to start in late winter, early spring in Mount Katahdin, which is in Georgia, because it goes from Georgia to Maine. Okay.
Right.
When you get to Maine, you want to get there before the snow falls, because if it does in Baxter State Park, where it ends up there, they are actually going to kick you out of there. They're not going to let you in. They're not going to let you go up that tall 5,300 feet, whatever it is, Mount Katahdin, which is one of the most difficult mountains to climb in the whole eastern coast, as well as the Appalachian Trail.
Right.
So you want to have a early start in the year and start going north, because it could take 4 to 6 months if you're doing the whole thing at one time. Now, as a sectional hiker, I get to pick and choose my seasons. And there's a reason for that. One, I don't have 4 to 6 months to take off work, leave a family. Gee, if I did that, I probably wouldn't have a family back here. But people that usually do that are people that are retired, between jobs, and a lot of them are youngsters right out of school, either high school or college, that do that. Now, here's the other option. You can, if you started later in the year, you would start in the north and accomplish the worst first, which is difficult, to get that over first, and then head south. If you're doing it in, say, May or June, that way you want to get down to Springer Mountain in the south in Georgia before, well, I was going to say you might encounter a little bit of snow in October, but you try to get down there before Thanksgiving, basically. All right. So with that said, I wrote a book about how to do it in sections, because most people don't have 4 to 6 months to take off work, or whatever the case may be. So therefore, what I did is I took anywhere from 5 days, and towards the Maine, when I was in Maine, because I had to travel all the way up there from South Carolina, I actually did 2 weeks. Okay. But by that time, I was semi-retired. I finished the trail when I was 73 years old, which is a little bit on the rarity.
Absolutely. Well, let's go back to into your journey with addiction. So, how did that evolve? And and not only addiction to alcohol, but you said you also experienced PTSD. Is that right?
That's correct. Jeff, it's do we have enough time? That's the question.
We got
my love for alcohol drinking started around 15 years old. And both my parents are alcoholics. They both of them died of alcoholism, which means I'm also a candidate and member of ACOA, which is adult children of alcoholics. Okay.
Right.
So, and adult children of alcoholics is sort of like an Al-Anon group, but it's different. Now, when I was sober for, I don't say 13, 14 years, I went into group therapy, not knowing what's going to happen. And this group the other patients in the group therapy were also addicts of some sort, most of them alcoholics, like myself. On the second session of that therapy, one of the therapists said, "Jim, you have PTSD." I didn't know what that was. Who? What? Where? Huh? So he explained it to me, post-traumatic disorder. Okay. So he explained it as stress disorder. He explained it to me in detail. I said, well, I've never been in the military. I said, Jim, you weren't in the military, but you were fighting a battle for 16 years. My father was very, unfortunately, he also had PTSD from World War II. I consider myself a second generational PTSD. And the therapist said, your PTSD is worse than his because you had no defenses and it was a longer period of time. You didn't have a rifle. My father actually chased me out of the house when I was taking my father and taking him off my mother from beating him again. I was about 16, 17 years old. I told my dad while he was drunk, I said, I'm tired of you. I'm tired of you doing this anymore. So I yanked him off. Well, in that process, he went to the bedroom, got a double barrel shotgun, and my mother screamed, "Run, he's got the shotgun." Now, I didn't have any weapons, did I? No, I'm just a kid. He outweighed me, outweaponed me. He out everything of me. All right. So I looked around and I saw the double barrel shotgun coming around the corner of the kitchen wall. Well, I didn't stop and say, "Hey, Dad, is that loaded?" I just wanted to know. No, I didn't ask that. I ran. Well, the police came, took away the rifle, double barrel shotgun. But back in those days, they gave it back to him and nobody pressed charges. They didn't ask me any questions. So these are kind of one incident out of many that occurred. So my childhood was not a pleasant childhood in that factor. But in my book, I mentioned a lot of things that were pleasant. My father was like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. When he was drinking, he was the worst guy you ever want to be around. But when he wasn't drinking, he was a very pleasant guy. He was pleasant to the neighbors. He was pleasant to us. He was a nice dad. But when he started that drinking, and he did it quite often, and you never knew when. That's the thing. You never knew when. So that's how I developed my PTSD as a child, being raised by a raging lunatic alcoholic of 16 years or 17. Okay. Good question, Jeff. And then my alcoholism, I started drinking around 14 and 15. And in the pain I was in, and I described the pain in very detail in chapter 2 of my book. Yeah. And the pain was, I guess I use let's put it like this. I'm going to shorten it. Alcohol for me was I was looking for love in all the wrong places. Remember that song?
Oh, yeah.
Love in all the wrong places. Well, that was me, except I was looking for love in the bottle and in the friends that I had that drank with me, who probably also had the same conditions.
Yeah, so you probably had kind of a dichotomy of feelings for your father, right? Because he was...
Well, I forgave my father a long time ago, yeah. Jeff. I went through the 12 steps of AA, and I'm still in AA, by the way. And now I have May would be 50 years of sobriety. Right now I have 49 years of sobriety.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, that's all through the grace of God. And I'll explain that later to you, what happened, how that happened. Because it wasn't my initiative. It was the power of the be, as you call it. I call spirituality.
Yeah, we want to hear about the grace of God. That's what the podcast is all about, the grace of God. So
there you go.
Definitely want to hear about it.
Well, Jeff, I guess let's take me to the scene of West Virginia Institute of Technology. I was a senior student living in a little trailer across from the campus, across the river. Okay. West Virginia Tech is located then, but they moved since then, Montgomery, West Virginia, which is about 60 miles east of Charleston. Now, I'm not from West Virginia. Go ahead.
Let me just interject something right there. West Virginia Tech is very familiar with me because I played football at Salem, and I played at West Virginia Tech and walked up that mountain onto that turf field. I don't know if you remember that.
In Montgomery or Beckley, because they moved. Oh, I don't know how old you are.
All I know is I walked up. Well, that was probably in 1978 or 79.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so it was Montgomery. That was Montgomery.
Yeah. So
that's where I went. I graduated in 75.
Yeah, only team in the conference that had turf.
Yep.
So and you had to walk up a hill to get to the turf. So they try to
halfway up the mountain.
Yeah, they try to wear you out.
All the way up, just half. Yep, that's right.
Okay, well, I just want to let you know that I am familiar.
Okay, well, that's good. So there I was in a lonely trailer, and I've been trying to deal with this alcoholism on my own, not knowing that I'm an alcoholic. But what I did know is I had a problem drinking. And I saw myself becoming just like my father, a fallen down, angry drunk. And my hangovers were getting worse. I already had peptic ulcers. I gained a fair amount of pounds. And I was mainly a beer and wine drinker. I didn't get into the hard stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't like, the reason being is because the hard stuff, you see, I like to get that buzz, is what I was reaching for, the ultimate buzz, that high. Imagine yourself a surfer, and the surfer goes out and he's looking for that ultimate wave, that buzz, that wave. Well, that's what I was doing. I was looking for that ultimate buzz. But the problem with liquor, it took me to the buzz, but then it went way over because I got drunk and sloshy, falling down and vomiting too quickly. So I always, and for a while, it kind of worked, Jeff. You know, it worked a little bit. I got that buzz and everything's cool, but it didn't last long. It didn't last long. By the time I got into high school, I was especially, I say 10th, 11th grade, I was a onward and alcoholic, probably in the second degree of alcoholism at that point. And many times I'd gone over that buzz and, just didn't work. So I was looking for love in all the wrong places and to get that buzz to numb my feelings within. Alcoholism is just a symptom of something else. In my case, it was a symptom of PTSD.
Right.
And I was looking for a cure through alcoholism. I even tried geographic cures. You know what that is, Jeff?
I don't.
Well, explain it to you. Geographic cure is saying, gee, maybe I can control my drinking. And these alcoholics go through this thinking. Maybe I can control my drinking if I just pick myself up and live in a different place. I went from Maryland when I was 21 years old. I put everything in my car and went to Maine in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
To live. In the middle of winter. Was that crazy? That's crazy. Okay. I didn't know anybody up there. I didn't know. I just heard it was beautiful in the winter. So I went. I said, this is the way I'm going to start over again. The only problem, I had one problem with that, Jeff. Do you know what that was?
I give up. What was it?
That problem was I couldn't leave myself behind. I have to take myself with me when I went. And so therefore, that alcoholic tendency, compulsion to drink went with me to Maine. I couldn't leave it behind. I left my drinking buddies behind. I left all the triggers of where to go to drink behind. But all I did was find new ones up there. That's all I did. And I mentioned about a couple geographic cures that I tried there. So when I was up there, I did decide to transfer all my credits from Montgomery College, which was in Rockville, Maryland, to West Virginia Tech. And there again, it was kind of like a geographic cure, but it was more like I need to continue my college education to be a better person. That was in the book. I mentioned this. That was the first good decision out of 3 that I made. The second one was made May 17th, 1975, before you got there. And that decision was, I decided at that point, without a doubt, that I'm powerless over alcohol and that my life is unmanageable, meaning I'm an alcoholic. Because I was already going to meetings for about, I would say a month. The first meeting I went to, if I can grab it just a second, I was handed this big book, and you see it's kind of old now, it's 1975.
Right.
And it says Alcoholics Anonymous on it, okay? Right there, Alcoholics Anonymous. And a guy in there called Bill B, he signed it and put his telephone number. The date then, because he put a date in there, 4/15/75. And he wrote on there 1 day at a time. In other words, you stay sober 1 day at a time. You mentioned something that's sort of not incorrect in the introduction. You said, I defeated alcoholism. You never defeated. An alcoholic never, never, never defeats alcoholism. Just like you don't defeat PTSD. You may overcome the ravages of it. You may arrest it 1 day at a time, but you never defeat it. Because as soon as I think I defeat it, guess what happens? I get drunk. I get that thinking that, oh, well, I defeated it. I can drink one now. And it's that first drink that gets me drunk. Not the last one, but the first one. Imagine a train track. You're standing on a train track and a train is coming and it hits you. Which one killed you? The first one or the last one? Was it the engine or the caboose? Which one killed you?
It's going to be the
It's
first.
the engine. Well, that's how we think about it in AA. In AA, we think, hey, it's the first one, that first engine of going gulp, 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 that kills us. All right? That's the one that's going to get you drunk. Not the last one, the first one. Okay? So this big book, he handed it to me. And Bill said, and I had 2 sponsors from the get-go, very critical to get sponsors, very, very, very critical. And he said, Jim, read this book. He didn't say, oh, it's a nice book to read. You can open up and, just kind of, no, he said, read this book. This is our Bible of AA. Now, I bought another one later, the second edition, or this is the second edition. I did buy one of the third edition. This one was printed in 1955. It's an old book, but I got it in 1975. Okay. AA's been around since 1935. Bill W. and Dr. Bob were the co-founders of AA. It saved my life. But AA is a spiritual program. It's not a religious program. It's a spiritual program, the God of my understanding. Now, let's go back to that trailer, Jeff, where I was. There I was on my trailer. I got on my knees, and I would say that was probably the first time I ever prayed sincerely. I was 24 years old, and I had a very religious upbringing, but that meant nothing to me. As far as I'm concerned, God was out there, but God didn't want anything part of me because I was falling down drunk all the time. And I didn't drink every day either. It's just when I started, I got drunk, because there were days I didn't drink. I needed to go to class and study and stuff like that. And I knew that. But then once I started, and I had a slight idea that once I started, it seems like I can't stop. It's like a switch. You turn on the switch and guess what? You just keep on going. All right. So there I was. I got on my hands and knees and I said, God, get me out of this mess. 2:00 in the morning, drunk. Now, this is what happened. Next thing I knew, I was calling a telephone number. But back then, you don't really have numbers, like hotline numbers per se that you call. You call the operator. It's a rotary dial. You go, boom, boom. Okay, so I called operator and I told operator my problem, my frustrations. I'm tired of I was sick and tired of being sick and tired of drinking and the way I drank. Okay, and I can't seem to stop it. And she says, oh, so she connected me. I said, I'll connect you to AA. And I'm sitting on the phone. I said, AA, I don't want to fly any place. I'm not going anywhere. American Airlines? What in the heck she connected me with American Airlines for? I didn't know what AA was, Jeff. I didn't know what that was, except American Airlines. So she connected me, okay? And another person got on the phone. This is 2:00 in the morning now. And she kind of said a prayer for me. And I said, well, that's all fine and dandy, but I'm hurting. I'm hurting. Right. Emotionally and physically, I'm hurting. Okay. I had peptic ulcers at one point. I had many other kind of ailments as well. Hypoglycemic, low blood sugar. Okay. And it's all induced by alcohol. Okay. But anyway, so she said, nobody's able to take your phone to talk to you right now. It's 2:00 in the morning, but I'll tell you what to do. Write down this telephone number and then call me or call this number in the morning. Okay. And I said, okay. So I wrote it down. I woke up the next morning and I looked at the paper. I couldn't read my handwriting. It was chicken scratch. I was drunk. I couldn't read it. Well, long story short, 2 nights later, a carbon copied happened. And this is where God is persistent. Okay. This is where the God of my understanding he said, okay, this guy is being sincere, because in the years prior, I would always pray for, give me a better car, give me a beautiful woman, give me this, give me that, give me this, right? All the things I wanted, but not necessarily needed. Now I was praying to save my sanity,
Right.
and to save my life. Whole different ball game. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I got on my knees again. I prayed again. I called again to the operator. She switched me over again to an AA hotline. And that's what they did back then. Okay. And the lady got on the phone and said, didn't you call here a couple nights ago? And I said, well, I did. Yeah, that's me. I'm guilty. Yeah. And he said, well, what happened? I said, well, I couldn't read my handwriting. Oh, okay. I'll tell you what, we'll do this again. Except the next morning, Jeff, something happened different. I got awoken by a telephone call. They called me. And I believe it was Bill, not Bus, but Bill. And Bill says, Jim, I understand you called our hotline a couple of times early in the morning. I said, yeah, I did. He said, we like to come out to talk to you, but we want to make sure you're there because it's going to take us an hour to get there. I got to pick up my buddy. They always go in pairs when they do this. I got to pick up another buddy of mine who's across the river in Charleston, and then we'll come see you. Well, he spent a good hour or more coming to see me to pick up his friend, come and see me. And he sat down on the couch with me. And he said, after he explained his ordeal of alcoholism, they both did, and how they found recovery through the grace of God, through a fellowship that shares their hope, strength, and experiences with each other to achieve to achieve sobriety, okay, through the power of spirituality. So at that point, he put his hand on my knee and he said, Jim, are you ready to do anything to get you out of this predicament? Well, that was sort of like a test question. He didn't want to waste his time with me if I wasn't ready. And I said, yeah, I'm ready. Now, when I went to my first meeting, that wasn't my last drunk, because everybody in that meeting was much older than I. I was 24 years old in West Virginia, right?
Yeah.
Everybody was much, much young. You know, they were much older, and I was the youngest puppy. So I said to myself, how can it be an alcoholic? I knew I had a problem with alcohol, but how can I be an alcoholic with these guys around here? God, they're 10, 20, 30, 40 years older than I am. So I went out and did a scientific research test, and I used myself as the guinea pig. Okay. So I said, okay, then this is after being, I guess going to meetings for about 3 weeks or 4 weeks or so. So at that point, I went out and had one beer, and I did everything in my power just to have one beer and go home. And I did that. But let me ask you, Jeff, do you know anybody that thinks about how not to drink too many, say, apple juice? Do you know anybody that says that goes around thinking, okay, I can't drink any more than one glass of apple juice. If I do, I'm going to get really sick. I can't do that. Okay. No, it's not. My whole existence was around alcohol or apple juice. Okay. Whatever you want to call it, just fill in the blank. Okay. So I was real proud of myself. I said, see, I'm not alcoholic. I can do this without going to all those meetings. But 2 nights later, I did the same thing. I went out, except I wasn't that happy. I had 3 beers that night. I said, well, it's not as good as I like. And then about a couple of days later, I had the worst drunk of my entire life, spent another night in jail. And you know how they do on Perry Mason, when you're in jail, you can always have one phone call. So I asked the police officer there, I said, I need a phone call again, and I'm allowed to have one? He said, yeah. So I called my sponsor, 3 o'clock in the morning. He answered it, and it was a collect call. He received the collect call. He said, Jim, I was wondering where you were. I haven't heard from you in a week. And I said, yeah, I've been doing some experiments. He said, really? How'd it turn out? I'm positive. The test result is positive.
Yeah.
I'm an alcoholic.
Right.
And that was 1975. I handed the phone back over to the police officer there, through the jail, through the bars. Okay. And they talked for a while. I don't know what they said, but he said, okay, we're going to basically, I heard him, he came back to me. He said, Jim, we're going to let you out in a couple hours, let you kind of dry out a little bit here first. And we're going to let you out on the agreement that you are in the reconnaissance of your sponsor. Now, they don't do that today, do they? No. You go see the judge, okay, for drunk and disorderly. Because the reason why I was in there, because I cold cocked a guy that was about 60 pounds more than me and knocked him out. That's why I was there in jail that time, the second time around. Okay. I was in jail through a few times before that. So when I walked out of there, May 17th, 1975, the sun was shining early in the morning. I was heading back to at that point I was living, I was getting ready to go back. I had 3 more classes to take for the summer. So I spent three and a half months there before I graduated in August, because I had 3 classes I had to make up from when I transferred credits down. I lost some. So that is the story of how I got sober. Well, how does the trail mix with that? Okay.
Exactly.
How does the trail mix with that? Well, through Indian guides, which again is something like Boy Scouts. Some people recognize it, some people don't. I had a trail name. I had a Indian guide name, which was Eagle Trail Dancer. That's before I turned that over into my trail name. Because if you don't pick your trail name on the trail, they're going to pick one for you, and you may not like that one. Okay. So you better pick your own. So there I was.
Yeah, they might have had an interesting name for you if you're wearing that Elvis wig.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, if I wore that out there, they would, definitely. Well, one guy I met called Smokestack. And I said, why are you called Smokestack? And I found out later, because when he gets into his camp or shelters at night, he smokes the marijuana. And he offered me one and said, nah, I'm good. I'm good. Yep.
Yeah.
I'll just eat my food. I'm good.
Be trading addictions.
That's right. That's all I was doing. Well, I don't know I don't know who he was. It's just another guy. Another guy in the trails called Mojo. I don't know where he got that name from. Another guy I met on the trails called 00. Now you say, well, it has nothing to do about his personality, except that he was like in the 60s. In fact, I was older than him then. I was probably 69. He was 62 when I met him. And this was in Maine. I might have been 71 at that point. I might have been a little bit older when I met him doing that section. And he's called 00 because Maine was so tough at his age, or mine. He needed 2 days of complete relaxation before he goes on to the next 50, 80 miles. All right. So they call them, and when you take a whole day off, they call that a 0 day. You're not doing any mileage. It's 0 miles because you need rest. Your body needs rest after 4 or 5 days of just hunking the trail up and down.
Yeah, I can imagine.
All right. So, because it's like running a mini marathon every day.
Now, how much that pack weigh?
Well, when I first started out and I made all the mistakes in Shenandoah, it was 55 pounds. But this is back in 1988. I knew nothing about backpacking. But now I can go out for 4 or 5 days with all the food, all the water, not all water, but say 4 pounds of water, and I'm down to about 37 pounds, which is reasonable. So I finished the trail on July 23rd, 2023, up in Maine. That was the last section I did of the trail, and that's the last, but I did it over a course of 35 years, which is a feat by itself. And a lot of people will congratulate me on my sobriety. And I tell them, I said, don't thank me, thank God. Because I asked God to get me out of this mess. When I got on my knees and back at college, 2:00 in the morning in a trailer, I got on my knees and said, God, get me out of this mess. I can't do this anymore. And within, a little bit of time and working with people in the program, I got sober. So it's not my doing, it's God's doing. I just asked for it. And part of my theme of the book, I have several themes of the book. It's not just hiking the trail, Jeff. It's about living life.
Right.
Not just on the trail, but off the trail. Because things that are on the trail gives me a better outlook of things off the trail. Okay. As I went into a little bit of that earlier. So the first theme was that you don't have to hike an Appalachian Trail or any trail in 1 year. You can do it in segments. I train all year long. So day one, I'm on the trail. I get my trail legs. Trail legs is where through hikers think you can only develop your trail legs by hiking 2 or 3 weeks in a row. That way you build up your muscles. And I have over and over again, I have surprised through hikers who've been on the trail for 2 or 3 months, and I'm doing the same mileage they are. They look at me and said, when I started doing this, I only did 8 miles. Now I'm doing 20. I said, how in the world did you do 20 yesterday? I said, because I trained for it. I have a system down. Even at my age, at 70, now 74, I have a system. I have a system where I can get out and do those heavy miles. I trained for it. I even had a professional coach at one point out what I needed to do. And I added on some other things that I did. All right. So I tell people, I say, you don't have to do it all one time. I said, do you have 6 months to get, to go out and do something like that and say, bye, hon, bye, kids, bye this, bye, job, bye that? No, a lot of people don't. I know, Jeff, can you say bye for 6 months for somebody and say never see him again for 6 months?
Well, I was in collegiate coaching, so that's pretty much what I did every year.
Well, so my book is dedicated for those that don't have the 6 months and to prepare them over a long haul. Okay. So the other thing, and that's a subculture, hiking is a subculture all by itself. Then the other subculture is recovery. How to stay, not just in chapter 5, I talk about getting sober, but staying sober. And that's a little more difficult. A lot of people dry out. A lot of people go to detox. They come out. The judge says, we call it nudge by the judge. Okay. And he said, you got to go to AA. Okay. And we see them all the time in there. And after 6 months, we don't see them anymore. And they get dried out for 6 months and that's it. They're done. They go back drinking because they met their requirements through the court system. That's it. They're done. Some of them actually do get it, but a lot of them don't.
What was it specifically about the hiking that kept you from drinking? And what was the magic in the hiking?
Finding, and there's a couple spots in there, I say that in the book, that the spirituality, my God, my understanding, my faith, as you may want to say, is my cathedral is really the wilderness.
Gotcha.
I realized that when I was out there. And you asked me a question. I said, isn't it dangerous? This is before we got on here. I said, isn't it dangerous on the trail? And I forgot how you worded it. If you want
basically, you hear a lot of stories about murderers out in the woods. And of course, there have been several murders.
Yep.
I mean, there have been people murdered in the woods very frequently. So, yeah.
Well, it's not frequently. I'm going to correct you on that. It's not frequently. All right. If you look at the statistics.
If basically you look at all the different serial killers, you got bodies in the woods everywhere. So that's all I'm saying is like, did you carry a weapon?
No. Yeah, and it's impossible to carry a weapon because every time you cross the state line, you got to have it restated and relicensed. And every state has a different rule. And
So
I consider it a
safe.
weapon as dead weight. It's dead weight. Funny, kind of ironic.
Hey, how about dangerous animals?
Well, no, let's go back to the people. Okay. We're going to talk about the animals in a second. First of all, the people that, yes, there are people that got killed on the trail, but then you turn around and say, statistically, how many people get killed in town? You know, you hear about these machine guns, semi-automatics. They're going down to the mall. You don't see that on the trail. Never once had somebody taken a machine gun and shot a bunch of hikers. Maybe one or two with a gun or a knife or something. Yes, I agree. The statistics are extremely low in comparison of people dying in the city. Now, let's go one more further step before I get to the animals and the little critters, okay? My wife used to be scared when I was on the trail when I first started because I didn't know what I was doing either. But I wasn't scared. You know why, Jeff? Because God, in my understanding, my higher power was looking out for me. And I knew that. I knew that from day one I set on that trail. I said, God's going to watch out for me. There's a reason I'm here. And you know what the most beautiful thing is, Jeff, is knowing the purpose of you being alive. I know my purposes. It's in my book. I wrote about 2 or 3 of them in there. And there's several of them, not just one, but there's several. Having this podcast with you today, describing alcoholism and the hope, there is a lot of hope out there for relief of anybody looking at this thing, that there's relief of alcoholism or any addiction, and there's hope for this. Okay. That is one purpose to explain this to you, but I can't show my face. I can't give you my legal name. Okay.
Gotcha.
So
that's okay.
My wife would say, I know I go on these tangents, but I usually do circle back around. Okay. I know I go on tangents, but that's okay. All right. My wife said, Jim, when you go on these trips, you know what I fear most? I said, you getting to the trailhead before you start your hike. You get driving from point A to point B, and you parked your car at the trailhead and you made your arrangements with the shuttle runners or whatever way you're going to make your arrangements. He said, because I'll try to call her if I can't call her at the trailhead, because sometimes the phones don't work. So I try to call her before I get there while I'm, going through a town. I said, okay, I'm a half an hour away from my trailhead. I'm safe now. I'm almost safe. I'll be there in a half an hour and you don't have to worry anymore. You see, because once you're on the trail, I'm safe. Now we talk about the animals. Now, let me ask you, Jeff, what do you think is the most dangerous critter on the trail?
I can only speak from experience. And I was camping in West Virginia, actually, on a fishing trip when a black bear tore into the tent of, basically it was someone in my party. This individual, I won't mention any names, but this individual was actually in charge of wildlife in the state of West Virginia and punched the bear in the face.
Whoa.
So
then what happened?
Everybody scrambled. We turned on some lights somehow, lanterns or whatever. And the bear had run about maybe 25, 30 yards and was just kind of standing on the hill there, on the hillside. We were not attacked, but that kind of made a believer out of me about some of the dangers of camping. And the other thing, of course, would be poisonous snakes like a copperhead.
Sure. Yeah, I understand. Okay, let me ask you a question. In your tent, where was your food?
Well, the food had been tied up in a tree.
Okay.
But he evidently had some kind of loaf of bread or something in his tent.
All right. They're going to go after that loaf of bread. Right. It's a black bear. You know what the difference between a black bear and a grizzly? Unfortunately, there's no grizzlies on the East Coast.
Well, the grizzly is pretty fierce and pretty large.
Yes, they're larger and bigger. Well,
Yeah.
black bear, if somebody fed the black bear or somehow he got human food, he's going to go after your food. He don't care about you.
I
The
got you.
grizzly, you are the food. Hold on a second. All right. Fortunately, there's no grizzlies on the East Coast. They don't exist. They're only out northwest. Okay.
Okay.
Canada. All right. So the black bear is not the most dangerous critter out there. Now, other people said, like you said, copperheads, coyotes, mountain lions. Well, there's very few mountain lions. And they too are so hidden, if there is any, up north. The worst critter, and I've ran across, I made a list because you asked me about animals. I made a list. I had close encounters, very close encounters of rat, moose, cow. Yeah, I was chased by a cow. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
Skunk. I slept with a skunk one night. Copperhead, a deer in rut, scraping off, a raccoon that was trying to get my food up in the tree, and some other animal. When I used to take a tent, in the beginning I took tents, but now I only take a tarp. I don't take tents anymore. Some animal sniffing outside my tent, which I never found out what it was, and I didn't want to open up the tent to find out. It wasn't a bear. I knew that. It could have been a coyote, could have been a wild dog. The biggest thing I would fear at that point was a wild dog, but those are rare. The worst kind of critter that you can encounter is a smallest critter. It's called a tick. That's the worst critter.
I believe you.
If they bite you and they have the disease, not all of them have it, like a deer tick, you got Lyme disease. I've seen so many hikers complain about their symptoms of Lyme disease that they had to stop hiking.
Wow. Yeah.
One guy even wrote a book about it. Now, how many people write a book about, oh, I was attacked by a bear, a whole book about it, attacked by a bear, and I can't hike anymore? Well, okay. If you're out west, yeah. Bears, black bears in particular, for the most part, they will run from you. I've seen some doing day hikes. I didn't see any bear when I was physically backpacking the Appalachian Trail for 2,198 miles. And I went through all the bear country.
Gotcha.
Okay. However, I seen a couple of them in my rear view mirror when I was leaving. They were crossing the road. And when I was doing some day hikes in the Shenandoahs Mountains of Virginia, I saw one. But you know what? As soon as he saw me, he was up in the tree. He came down 1 second, and it took him another second to get through the bushes. Yeah. And he was gone. I couldn't get my camera myself. Back then I had a cell phone. That was last 10 years ago. I couldn't get a picture of the guy. That's how fast he was. They run. They don't like humans. They don't want, unless they ate your food.
Next time I go fishing in West Virginia and camp out, I'll keep that in mind.
Yes. Well, what you want to keep in mind is check yourself for ticks every night, Jeff.
Oh, yeah.
That's why underneath this wig, I'm bald, because it's easy to check ticks. I mean, I'm bald anyway, but I shave the rest of it off.
Don't give it away now. Somebody might recognize you.
No, well, if they know me already, that's okay. But in the Lemeth tradition, because this is being filmed and I don't know where it's going, okay, podcast, and I do have people that want to get on your podcast and see me here, they're going to laugh at this get up. I'm telling you, Jeff, they're going to have a ball with this one. But they can't come back and say, I revealed I broke my anonymity. They can't come back and say that.
We got about 2 minutes left here, so I want you to go ahead and talk a little bit about your book and maybe a little about the Freedom Networking Group, and maybe even mention something about Casual Adventure Outfitters before we close. Well,
Casual Venture Outfitters is located in Arlington, Virginia, 3451 North Washington Boulevard, just south of Washington, D.C. I am doing a book signing there March 28th. It's a Friday at 6 p.m. I will be talking about the trail. Now, if they don't film it, you're going to see my face. But if they film it, I'll be like this. Okay? Here's the book, Follow the White Blazes, written by, and it's Eagle Trail Dancer. You can order online, or you can meet me at any of the book signings if you want to do that. But you can get on Amazon. It's only been out since January 14th. And I already have one person that got on Amazon and gave me a 5-star rating already. Okay.
Excellent.
That is. And so, and I have 2 more. They called me and said, Jim, I'm going to give you a 5-star rating for this book. This is phenomenal because it describes 2 different subcultures blended together on the trail, recovery as well as backpacking long distances over a period of years. So Casual Venture is where I get my gear in Arlington, Virginia. As simple as that. It's like a mom and pop, fourth generation mom and pop outdoor gear. It's like a small REI, if that helps you. Okay.
Gotcha.
If you were to call there, you would ask for Eric Stern. He's the owner. He's the 4th generation owner of the store. I knew his father. He was the 3rd generation. I didn't know the 2nd generation. I'm not that old. I'm old, but not that old. Okay. All right. So Freedom Networking Group is my company. I'm working it now just part-time. We do have networking business groups. But we also do printing, promotional products, and wearables. And that's what I really do. In fact, the shirt I'm wearing, I did that myself.
Okay.
And it says I've hiked the entire Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine. All right. If you look at the banner in the back, you can just see that. I did that. I do pens, I do mugs. And when you buy a book directly from me at a signing place, or you can just, if you look up freedomnetworkinggroup.com, you'll get my telephone number. Okay. And you can call me and I'll ship you, and you get a free cooling towel with the book when you buy it directly from me. Okay. You buy it online, I can't do that because I don't really make much money when you buy it online, but I encourage you to do it if you can, because the book is not just for hikers. It's not just for people in recovery. It's really a book of resilience, persistence, and dedication. It's a book about life.
Gotcha. Well, your story is incredible, and I'll be looking forward to reading the book. Thanks so much for coming on. I love your story.
It's a pleasure.
I'm sure everyone will enjoy the podcast. So thank you so much.
God bless you, Jeff, and thank you.
Okay, take care.
May you find your trail of dreams at the crossing of the streams. Eagle Trail Dancer.
Thank you so much. Take care. We'll be talking.
All righty.
Join Coach C, USA Strength and Conditioning Hall of Famer and Certified Health and Life Coach every Monday night at 7 for Empowering Testimonies of Faith as diverse individuals from various professions share their personal journey, leading them to spiritual strength through surrendering themselves to Christ. Coach Connors aspires to influence others to choose a healthy threefold lifestyle with spirituality as the powerful foundation.